Hi, guys. Welcome back to the LoveSoul Movement podcast. This week almost didn't happen. This podcast this week almost didn't happen. It's been a couple weeks since I sat down, and the topic of the podcast that I wanted to do has changed like 3 or 4 times in the last couple of weeks because there's been so much that's happened. So much that's happened in my life, so much that's happening in the world right now. Things that are going, like, everybody's going through something. Everybody's going through something. And I think and the reason why. I know what the astrology is doing right now. I know that we're under a really harsh fixed T-square right now. I could talk about that a little bit here in a minute, but the energy is very tense. It's very palpable, and everything that's happening in society and everything that's happening in the world, and there's like a volcano about to erupt in the Philippines and nobody even knows about it because everything else that's happening. We have buildings collapsing and bridges collapsing and and like the virus is coming back up again. And I feel like there a lot of this world right now, we're sort of all sitting in this space of what's next, and I'm even seeing that in my own personal life as well. It's like, we haven't had a chance to just relax and breathe and exist in a peaceful, non-stressful time in our lives in like 20 years, and maybe even more than that, if you think about it. It's not even PTSD at this point. It's just fucking life. Like, life is PTSD. And I see it in really strange, small ways. Like, if you try to relate, like on Twitter, like if you try to relate with somebody on Twitter, like, hey, I tweeted this yesterday and it's very similar. Like, this happens a lot in the astrology, astro Twitter, right? You tweet something and and you see the same thing, like basically very close to the same kind of concept, idea, whatever that somebody else did, and you want to relate to them and be like, hey, look, and they automatically think that you're blaming them for stealing their tweet, because that has been a thing where intellectual property has been stolen from people on the internet, right and left and right and left and right and left, like for the last couple years now. And it's really gotten bad in the last year. And I want to keep reminding everybody that we have this Sagittarius Gemini axis in the North Node, and the North Node is in Gemini. The South Node is in Sagittarius. Intellectual property, it feels like it's just everybody's now, basically. And a lot of people are backing up statements that they don't even have proof of that's actually happening, but because the herd mentality, oh, well, this person believes it, I must believe it too. And I guess these things have always sort of been a thing, but man, it's like putting everything under a microscope right now. And a lot of people feel like even God might be that like bully that is putting us all under, the magnifying glass, talking about a microscope or a magnifying glass or making things bigger. Like people literally think that God is trying to torture them with a magnifying glass. They're these little ants crawling on the ground. That might be one of those like Generation X things that we did, because we were horrible little, like the fireflies. I don't know if any other Gen Xers, because I was born in 1979. So I remember, being out at night with the fireflies and like ripping the butts, the part that was, the glowing part. You would rip the butts off of it, and it was like war paint. You would like smear it, and then you glowed in the dark with the fireflies. It only lasted for like 10 seconds, and how disgusting is that? But it was fun. I was a tomboy, so I did shit like that all the time. But we don't get to have that kind of innocence anymore. I remember, I feel like I remember back in the day when I went up the hill with 10 feet of snow. I'm not doing that. I promise. I was reminiscing about, my childhood, because a lot of my childhood was not the most fun. But there are moments of my childhood that I can take hold of, moments that I had with myself, with my friends, that I can take hold of and I can remember those. And isn't it lovely to be able to remember the good moments and be able to detach from those bad moments and just be like, I don't need that anymore. I'm done. Um, but yeah, like I remember walking 2 or 3 miles to go to 7-Eleven just to get a Slurpee. Just to, because I found 50 cents under the couch so I could get some gum and a Slurpee, because that's how inexpensive Slurpees were back then. You can get it for like 25 cents, the small ones. And it was summer, so there was always the deal. And I remember roller skating. Oh, for like 2 or 3 years, I would wake up at the butt crack of dawn in the summer, put my roller skates on, and I would be out in the streets roller skating to my heart's content. I was like maybe 8 or 9, I think. You don't see kids doing that. Like I saw a kid on a like one of those big wheels, which I also had a big wheel. It was a hand-me-down. So the wheels were, it was all plastic, right? So the wheels were all like banged up and stuff. But I loved it because it was looked like a boy's big wheel because, again, hand-me-down. I was the youngest. So I don't think I really got anything new unless my mom used to make my baby clothes. She had a sewing machine. But I don't think I ever really got any new clothes. I wore my older brother's clothes for a very long time. But yeah, so I was thinking about the innocence, right? All of that. And then I think about my children. I have two older sons they're adults now, 20 and 18. I mean, I don't know that I would say 18 is much of, they're adult-ish. They're getting there. They're doing really well, but they're getting there. And then I have a younger son who will be 8 in a couple of months. And so my younger son is the age that I'm talking about. And we would be left home alone all day long while our parents worked in the summertime, and we would roller skate or we would just roam the city. And I didn't really live in the best neighborhood. But back then, even that just didn't seem to bother us. We weren't in fear to go play all day long and play in the sewers and play, do all that stuff. And my 8-year-old will not be left home alone. And my 8-year-old, he plays out in the backyard, and he can play in the front yard too, but there's always somebody keeping an eye on him. He's not roaming the city like I did when I was 8 or 9 or 10 or however old I was. And I remember all of these things. And my older two boys, same thing. Their dad lived in a cul-de-sac, so kind of a cul-de-sac. So it was easier for them to do that, to play in the streets over there. But it just isn't the same for kids these days. Cause even, I remember friends that lived in apartment complexes, and we would just be outside all day long and I just don't see that anymore. And so much of it has to do, like, all of my children don't know a time before 9/11. All of my children don't know a time before, like this huge, gigantic tragedy and there's always been tragedies, I guess, but it's different now because there hasn't been a moment where we can stop and breathe. And our parents went through so much trauma. Like my parents went through the Vietnam War. That was very traumatic for them because that was the first time that anybody was seeing the war on television. I'm getting to a point here, I promise. But we have taken on these generational emotions and generational feelings, and we have held them as our own fears, right? As we got into the 90s and I became more of a teenager, and the 90s were a scary time. That's kind of when the scariness really started to come back, really started to be, we were afraid again. And I think a lot of it was because the trauma and the PTSD that our parents went through had been passed down to us, and we didn't really know we weren't taught how to process our emotions effectively. There was a lot of suicide in Gen X. There was just thinking about how many people in my generation took their own lives by drug overdose or by suicide is frightening to think about. And so collectively now, watching how we maneuver ourselves in this world that has placed so much fear on us, when it's a collective fear that we're all feeling, bringing it down to our own personal lives and trying to not feel that fear within our own personal lives is very difficult, especially if you're the kind of person that never really was taught what feeling safe or feeling loved or feeling emotionally secure. You know, if you weren't taught those skills, or if you weren't shown those skills growing up as a, you know, a child or a teenager, no, you know, you have to kind of learn it on your own. You have to end up figuring it out on your own. And that's very difficult. And the majority of us are in that situation. I'm really happy to start seeing that there are a lot of people within my generation and the generations after me that are so much more consciously aware, and they are conscious parenting better, and they are having conscious relationships better. There's still a lot of work that we need to be doing for ourselves, but also the collective energy. And I'm a firm believer that the more you work on yourself, the more that spills out into the energy. Can you imagine if every single person started focusing on their own mental health, on their own, on their, you know, being their own advocate and not just going by what other people say or what other people think or what other people do or you know, that whole kind of thing. But we don't talk about how the trauma of being placed in fearful situations and having that trauma and having that kind of PTSD, we don't talk about the aftershocks. We don't talk about the after effects. We don't talk about how people become so enraged. And when they're told to hold that in and no, you cannot express that, and they find this rage within themselves and it is projected out into the world as violence, why are we not talking about this more? And I think that the conversation shows up every once in a while in rooms with very important people, and so we hear about it. I'm going to put that in quotations, very important people, let's just say those faces that are really, really popular and people listen to, I guess. So it comes out and it's talked about for about, 15 minutes, and then it gets put back away again. And then we have to fend for ourselves. And I think that is where we need to start. I think that recognizing that, validating the recognition that we need to validate people's emotions and understand that a lot of times it's not about how we feel about the situation, but how somebody else is feeling about the situation. I have always been kind of the person that just stayed to myself. I didn't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. I didn't want to make a big commotion. I was always very I'm just going to stay over here and stay really, really quiet so nobody actually notices me. We call that a wallflower. And it never actually worked. I could never fall fully into that wallflower category, whether that was because I have a Mercury and Jupiter in the 11th house, so people are going to hear what I say because my voice is so loud. I don't need a microphone when I am in a room of 200 people, and there's a reason for that. So I don't know if it was that or if it was the fact that my energy always did give off this kind of thing that attracted people to me. My whole life I was like that. So I tried being a wallflower. Didn't really work so much for me, but I tried. And even, just earlier this year, I had said to my father, who's very, he has his own ideas. And I just smile and I nod and I said, I'm really glad that you are comfortable with that for yourself. And I move on because I'm not going there. He's great. He's a good man. Um, but yeah, I even said to him, I'm just trying to mind my own business. Like, I don't want to, I'm not here to like tell anybody how to live their life or mind my own business or anything like that. And it's true. Like, I do want to mind my own business, and I absolutely do mind my own business until that fire inside of me starts to grow so much where it's like, somebody's got to say something. Like, we can't just sit around and pretend that our kids are okay. That's what happened in the 90s. Everybody sat around and pretended. We were listening to like the most emo music, calling it grunge because, of course, but it was so emo and it was angry and it was, um, we were trying to have our voices heard in so many ways, but because it was just so tragic, it was very hard. It was very hard for our voices to be heard. So, um, we got to listen to our kids. We got to listen. And it's not even and like, maybe that's a plea to Gen X. And I think that most of you who are in my generation understand what I'm saying. The generations after us, like, even the Pluto and Scorpio generation. So Pluto in Libra, mainly the end of Pluto and Virgo, and the Pluto and Libra generation is Gen X generally. And then the millennials, the Pluto and Scorpio is right after us. And Pluto and Scorpio are game changers because they are innately born with this knowing that in order to live, in order to like rise up like the phoenix, you got to kill off some things, right? And so Pluto and Scorpio is here to kill off some things, where Pluto and Sagittarius which are my older two children. They're the game changers as well. And then we get to the Pluto and Capricorn generation, which is my youngest son. And we're still in the Pluto and Capricorn generation. And the fact that these children have already been silenced in so many ways because of where we are in the world now, that needs to be addressed, I think, in a regular, more often. And I think the reason why this was the biggest thing for me to talk about with you guys this week is because it all has to do with how we are taught to love ourselves, how we are taught to connect to our emotions, or lack thereof. Okay. So how we are taught and lack thereof of connecting to our emotions, and how we're not really necessarily aware that that's what's wrong. Right. Cause to us, looking at something that's happening in the collective and looking at this fear that's going on around us, and whether we believe it's in the matrix or whether we believe that it is something that is reality, I'm not going to get into that discussion today, because you're going to believe what you're going to believe. But the truth of the matter is no matter if you're sitting in the matrix and living there, or you're living in your own conscious awareness, knowing that you're just a part of this big energy that's going on, wherever you're sitting within that whole constraint of things, we can all agree on the fact that we are going through human experiences together. And instead of ignoring that and just la-di-daing our way through life, because the goal is to bring back that love vibration that was lost a really long time ago. And there are going to be people that are going to listen to me saying that, and they're going to be like, oh, not another hippie talking about how we all need love. That's okay if you feel that way, but what's wrong with having love? What's wrong with feeling the immense emotion of love as a collective energy? What is actually wrong with that? Or are you so jaded to believe that love is only pain? Yes, love is pain. We've all experienced that. I'm sure every single one of us have. But love is also the thing that drives us. It's the passion. It's the source. It's all that is. And when you are not created in love, when you, and remember that our energy feels these kinds of things, right? We know as babies coming into the world that we are not in a safe position if our mothers are tense all the time. But that's the thing. And we just have this huge jaded idea of what love is supposed to look like and what love is supposed to feel like. And when we get into that moment in our lives where we think that we love someone, we think that we are in a moment and experience and this is everything to us, and then we get hurt. We are broken by words. We are broken by actions. We are broken by somebody not thinking about how we're going to feel about this situation. We automatically become jaded. We automatically take that word love and we hate it. And the opposite of love is hate. So it's kind of impossible to hate love. But we have figured out a way to do that. And so the journey that we all sort of have to take with ourselves is to teach ourselves how to love. And myself being a parent, and I'm absolutely going to do an episode on conscious parenting. That's been something that's been brewing for a while because I have been the conscious parent and I have been the unconscious parent, and night and day. But I know as a parent and watching my children grow up in this world that they don't know anything but fear. The best thing that I can do for them is to show them what real love looks like, what the honesty looks like, what the truth looks like, what emotions are supposed to represent instead of overtake, right? Like we have emotions to represent certain ways that we feel about things. They're not supposed to overtake our lives and create this, entire world of pain and exhaustion and fear. So, and that's all we do now because we are wearing our emotions on our, like every single nerve ending, right? There's an emotion. And it's not in a healthy kind of way because they're all sitting there right on the nerve endings, but there's like a veil right over, right? So they're sort of being kind of protected a little bit, kind of maybe. Those emotions that we're wearing right there. And pop, something happens. And it's like we're shaking and we're having panic attacks. And, people that I saw as really, really strong individuals in my past have crumbled in everything that's been happening. So, and I feel like the basis of it is the fact that we're so consumed by the fear and we're so consumed by the things that we're not able to do, by the lack of, what we're not able to do. We're so consumed by all of that we can't focus long enough to enjoy life because there are still so many things to enjoy. So breaking that kind of thing down, and I know that breaking it all down is really, really super long-winded, but there's a lot to unpack with that. And I'm not going to do that in one 45-minute podcast. Like can't unpack the whole world's trauma and all of that. But what we can absolutely do, and this is something that I am in the process of learning in a really big way, is despite all the adversity, despite all the fear, despite all the fear mongering, because you know that that stuff is escalated a lot by the media. I'm not, yeah, we know that, but um, the best thing that we can do for ourselves is to continue to find that source of love within us and learn how, man, just learn what real honest love is, because love is about telling the truth, and love is about not taking offense to a person telling you the truth, and love is about understanding that other people may have the same experience as you do, but they're going to see it in a totally different perspective than you do. And wow, if we only just decided that we wanted to understand or understand what somebody else is going through through that same experience that we're going through, and looking at it really from their point of view instead of always thinking that our point of view is best, that's love. And loving yourself is not about trying to be the skinniest, trying to be the prettiest. I hear that women now are sucking the fat out of their stomachs and putting it in their butts for the BBL, the Brazilian butt lift. Wish that wasn't a thing. I mean, it's if women want to do that and that's what makes them feel good, that's awesome. But I urge you to not do something like that if you're just trying to look better to the outside world. If you want to do it 100% for your own, yes, but doesn't matter what the outside world thinks of you. And allowing ourselves to understand that loving ourselves is being honest with ourselves. And it's funny because addicts learn, the 12 step. I've never been, I haven't had to go through that part of something, I've never been addicted to anything like that in my life, except for like cigarettes. I smoked for 23 years. Thank God I don't do that anymore. But I've never had to feel the pain of being an addict with any heavy drugs, or with alcohol or anything like that. Because that's a hard journey to be on. That's a really difficult journey to be on. And I think that the stigma that we put on addicts and people that drink alcohol, and it's the same kind of thing with prisons, man. Like, why are we imprisoning people when we really need to be paying more attention to their mental health? Like, why, but again, these are controversies that aren't going to be tackled in a 45-minute podcast. I think that just, being super aware of allowing ourselves to look at who we are and what we've been through and be like, damn, I'm kind of an amazing person, and not need to have somebody else tell you that to believe it. That's what we need to be teaching. That's where the understanding is getting mixed up. So when you are in the face of adversity, and you guys, for those of you who've been listening to this podcast since the very beginning, you know that I had a blood clot in my, but for those of you who don't, you're getting the story now. I had a blood clot in my brain, was found at the end of April. We now have the cause for that and the reason for that. And it's a whole new journey that I'm going to have to be on. And it's not going to be easy. And it's not going to be something that I will enjoy and jump up and down and dance. And that's not going to be the fun part. But that doesn't mean that I stop living. Right? Because when we are faced with adversity, if we are not taught that you don't have to try and survive this you can try and see this from a different perspective and allow yourself to understand that this can help push you into another level of existence. This can help push you into, the growth and the strength and man, the ways that you can help other people because you overcame. And I'm not going to try and be flowery about anything and say, if you're sitting there in a space where you just don't even want to get out of bed and you don't want to deal with your day and you're depressed and you feel like nothing is worth your energy today, I want you to honor that too. Because that's real. That's honest. That's the truth. Right? It's weird to say that you've been diagnosed with cancer. It's weird to say that because those are weird words. And I know it's so funny that I'm even laughing about it. It's funny, but that's what the cause of this was. It's something that's manageable. It's something that's treatable. It's something that's chronic. I'll probably, have good days and I'll have bad days, but man, I'm going to try and have more good days than bad days, but I'm going to have those days where I'm laying in bed and I don't want to get out. And I think the hope behind that is recognizing your limits, because you can be in that position where you don't want to get out of bed and you are devastated because you pushed yourself too much and you're exhausted. And when you're exhausted and you're dehydrated and you're not taking care of your body and you're laying in bed all the time, or you're not laying in bed all the time, you push and push and push and push, and then you end up exhausted and flat on your back in bed from this exhaustion. That's your body's way of saying you need to, your rest should have happened a long time ago. But again, we live in a world where if you're not hustling, then you're not worthy. That's capitalism. And we've been under a horrible work schedule since the Industrial Revolution, right? So 40-week work schedules turn into 40-hour work schedules turn into 70-hour work schedules for people. And then they collapse with exhaustion. And that's not loving yourself, but those are the things that we've been conditioned and programmed to believe. So there's a difference. There's a difference between facing some kind of adversity and knowing that it's okay to kind of sink into the emotions and the feelings that this adversity is giving you, or this experience that you're going through is giving you. That's one thing. That's like a healthy way to express how you feel about something. As long as you don't stay in it, as long as you can recognize these emotions and then be like, man, but I've gotten this far, so I know that I can go farther. There's a difference between that, and there's a difference between pushing yourself so much and giving yourself your own adversity in your face. Because I remember, before all of this happened, I would work and work and work and work and work. And even as a spiritual teacher, I would work and work and work and work and work and work. And then I would collapse for 2 days, just exhausted and not able to do anything for a couple of days. And that's not normal, you guys. That's our bodies are literally screaming at us. And it's, we can say that it's unfortunate that it took me, the universe saying, it's time for you to focus on yourself, and it's time for you to receive the love, and it's time for you to begin to heal. And after 41 years of not loving my body, even when I was 95 pounds soaking wet and I was an hourglass figure and I was at my prime, my 18, 19 years old, just I looked like I looked amazing. But I still do. And that's the thing. That's the mindset. It's great that I looked like that, but that girl didn't even appreciate her body. And that's how most girls grow up, is not appreciate. And boys grow up the same way. I've recognized, raising my own 3 boys, They have their own body insecurities. Oh man, you have no idea. Why can we not love ourselves at a core level instead of torturing ourselves for that? I tortured myself for 41 years. Fad diets, up and down, all of the things. And then I end up with my body saying, well, you hated me for 41 years, and so here we are. Because I truly believe that the emotions that we carry in our body are going to show up in a physical way. That's why when you are exhausted, your body flattens. That's why when we have the energy of stress all the time, when we have the energy of constantly putting in, foods in our body that aren't good, when we have all of these negative energies that we're pounding our bodies with, and on top of it, we look in the mirror and we go, ugh, that's not good energy to hold. And your body will tell you it is not good energy to hold. And that's what LoveSoul is all about, because it's allowing you to remind yourself that no matter the PTSD, no matter the adversity that we've been through, no matter anything that is going on in the world, one of the biggest things of the utmost importance is how are you taking care to bring peace into your life? And to understand that you are not defined by all of the trauma. You're not defined by that kind of stuff. And we do that to ourselves. We define ourselves by the trauma. We define ourselves by all of the things that go on. And then that's why as we get older, we get sicker. And I don't know if you guys are paying attention, but we are not living as long as we used to. I know that's really kind of funny to say, because people are like, oh, well, people are living longer than, they used to. They only lived until like mid-20s back in whatever, right? When there wasn't any medicines or anything like that. But I'm already hearing about people who are in their mid-40s or who are 50, who are, passing away and from heart disease and from cancers and from all sorts of things. And here I am at 41 with a cancer that is so rare that people my age they rarely see it. It's happened, but it is reserved for people that are over 60. My body is literally screaming at me and saying, listen, you worked us down to the fact that you're 41 years old and it's like you're 60. Instead. the audacity of me to think that was okay to do. So, but that's my cross. That's what I have to take care of now. And it's unfortunate that it took to this. It's absolutely unfortunate that it took to this. And sometimes that's just what needs to happen. We got to get a wake-up call. We have to see that things need to change. And yes, they need to change in a community level. Yes, they need to change outside of us. But the biggest thing that's really going to help is when we start changing it within ourselves. Because the more that we love you can't hate on people when you love yourself. I am a prime, you can't be cynical when you are loving on yourself and you're doing things for yourself that keep you healthy and keep you happy. And because when you're not feeling good, you're not happy. And that's just the way it goes, right? When you're stressed out, you're not happy. When you're whatever, right? You're not happy. And life, it's not going to be easy, but we're not meant to just be born, work our entire asses off, and then die and do a whole bunch of diets in between. Where's the joy in that? Where's the fun in that? And when we're happy, we stop judging other people. When we're happy, we can be happy for other people's successes. When we genuinely love ourselves and create happiness within our own energy, it changes your entire aura. It changes your entire existence. And I mean, I'm sorry, but being cynical is like, it's not cute. Like, let's not bring that 90s fad back, being cynical. Let's not do that shit, because being cynical and being skeptical is only going to keep you from fulfilling your dreams and from creating empires and creating a legacy that you are proud to be able to say, I did my fucking best. And here's what my best looks like. You don't want to like hand somebody your best and it's just this like wrangled, here you go. No. So, it's very interesting to be able to have that kind of conversation. And it's open-ended, because this isn't just because I'm going to be ending the podcast in 5 minutes doesn't mean that this conversation is over. This is something that we need to continue to be talking about over and over and over again. And, try and put it in a way that's not rambling. Try and put it in a way that's not so complicated for others to understand. Life will have you thinking that being miserable and keeping people at a distance and holding on to all of your pain and all of your trauma is better for you than being vulnerable and being open and being receptive and having faith, right? Less judgment and more praise. And life can beat a person down. But I'm at that point where perspective is everything. You have to wake up every single morning and decide for yourself what perspective you're going to be in that day. And that's really kind of how it starts. So thanks again, you guys, for coming to this space and being with me as we sort of just talk about how loving ourselves intentionally, consciously aware, intentionally can create ripples, can create waves out into the world. And, it's not even really that wild of a notion anymore that, loving yourself instead of passing judgment on yourself is going to do the same. It's going to affect everybody and everything that you come in contact with. And so I hope for all of you that this kind of got you thinking about how you spend your time and how you spend your days and how you create, blockages for yourself just by simply not engaging with your own emotions and allowing yourself to learn how to trust yourself and have faith in, because you don't have to trust or have faith in anybody else until you learn how to trust and have faith in yourself. And that's something that we also have not learned to do. So I love you all. I hope you have a wonderful couple of weeks. Hopefully I'll be back soon, and take care of yourselves. If you would like to help, during this time, I still am not going to be working because I'll be doing treatments. So if you would like to help, all of the GoFundMe information, all of my PayPal information, and my Cash App information is in the description box underneath this video if you're watching on YouTube, or it'll be in the description box on Spotify. I love you guys. I will see you soon. Bye.